everyone, my name is Becky, and I'm a Sunday school teacher here at Punta Gorda Church of the Nazarene. And I have a really great story for you today. I miss talking to the kids at Sunday school, and so I thought maybe I could share with them by doing this. I want to tell you a story about a man named Jonah. Jonah was a prophet of the Lord, and God would give him messages. He would take them and deliver them to the people that God wanted him to give them to. Now, one day, God came to Jonah and he said, Jonah, I want you to go to the city of Nineveh, and that's in Assyria country. And I want you to go and tell all these people in that great big city that they're being warned that God was going to destroy the city because they were so evil. They were cruel. They were mean to each other. They did horrible things. And God decided that it was time for those people to be punished. And so he told Jonah, he said, I need you to go there and warn these people. They will have 40 days to make a change. And I just want you to know that God is a God of do-overs. And he's a God of second chances. And that's what he was doing for these people, giving them another chance. So Jonah got to thinking about what God wanted him to do. Jonah had a problem. He did not like the people in Nineveh. He did not want them to have a second chance. They were the enemies of his people, the Israelites. He did not want to go and tell them that God was going to destroy them. They did not change their ways. And so he got to thinking about it some more. He decided he wasn't going to go. He just did not want to go to Nineveh. So he came up with a plan. He decided that he was going to run away. So he went to the city of Joppa. When he got there, it was a seaport. And he went down to the dock. He bought himself a ticket for one of the ships. And he got ready to go. He was going to go as far away as he could get. And he was going to go to a town called Tarshish. And that town was like 2,000 miles away. He thought he could get away from the presence of God by going that far. And so he got around, he found the ship, and he got on it. And he was really tired that day. So he went down into the hold of the ship. He made himself a nice, comfortable place to lay down. And Jonah went to sleep. Well, the ship got ready to set sail, and they were headed out into the Mediterranean Sea. And they went along, and everything was going good. And there was Jonah down there sleeping. But once they started going, things started happening. The wind came up. God sent a strong wind because he knew where Jonah was. He saw that Jonah was sleeping. And so he decided, God said, that he was going to let Jonah know that he could not run away from God. And so the ship started rocking, and the wind got stronger, and I'm sure it was a terrible storm. And the sailors on the boat, well, they got scared. They didn't know what was going on. This was the worst storm they had ever seen. And so they decided that they better be doing something. So they thought if they could throw some of the cargo overboard, that would make the ship lighter and it wouldn't sink. Because it looked like the way things were going, they were all going to drown. So they started throwing things overboard. Boxes, crates, whatever they could get their hands on. And while they were doing this, some of them were actually praying. Oh, but they weren't praying to the God that we know. They were praying to this God's, whatever God that they'd ever heard of. And they were praying hard because they were praying that they wouldn't drown. And then the captain of the ship, he said, where is that man that got on board with us? Why isn't he up here helping? Why isn't he praying? And so the captain and a couple of the men decided to go down and look for Jonah. There they found him. Yep, sleeping in the boat. And they came along, and the captain reached out, shook him, and said, hey, you sleeper, wake up. What are you doing sleeping at a time like this? Can't you hear that storm outside? Can't you hear the wind blowing? You need to get out of here and come up on deck and pray with us. You need to pray to your God and ask him if maybe he can help us. And Jonah said, well, I could do that. And they started asking questions. And they said, who are you? Where are you from? Where are you going? Why are you going to Tarshish? And he looked at them and he said, well, you know what? I am a Hebrew. I am from the land of Israel. And I am afraid of the God of heaven, the God who made the sea and the land. And I was trying to get away from him. And it seems that it's not working. And the men asked him and they said, well, why did you do this? And he said, because God wanted me to go to Nineveh. I didn't want to go. Well, they all started talking to him at one time and they said, we need to go back up on deck. And you need to tell us what do we need to do so that we can make the storm stop. And Jonah said, well, I guess about the only thing I know to do is for you to throw me into the water. Throw me into the sea. And the men looked at him and they said, oh, we can't do that. We can't throw anybody into that sea. Why, you would drown immediately. And he said, but there's no other way. Well, they said, you know what? We'll try something else. And so they went back up on the deck and they tried to row. They rowed and they rowed. The wind was getting good. The wind was getting higher. The waves were going up over the ship. And they just knew that they were going to have to do what Jonah had said. They were going to have to throw him into the sea. So they picked up Jonah, went over to the side of the ship, and some of the men started praying, Lord, please don't hold this against us. Please don't hold us responsible for throwing this man into the sea. This was your plan, God. This is what you wanted to do. And so Jonah, he said, go ahead, do it. Throw me in. And they said, okay. And they threw Jonah over the side of the ship. And down, down, down he went. And in the hit the water, the storm stopped. The wind stopped blowing. The ship stopped rocking. The sailors looked around and they said, wow, it's true. Now we know that Jonah's God is the true God. He is the God of miracles. He is the God who sent the storm, and he is the one who stopped it. And they started praising God and thanking him for saving their lives. And I just think maybe some of them were trying to look over the side of the ship and see if they could still see Jonah. But he was gone. He was out of sight. They had no idea what had happened to him. Does anybody notice what else is in this picture? Do you see what's on the bottom of this picture? There's a great big fish. It's huge. And God had prepared a great big fish for Jonah. As you can see, Jonah went down, down, down into the water. And the big fish started swimming towards him with his mouth wide open. And Jonah, can you imagine what he was thinking? Oh no! Look at that fish! He's huge! He's going to eat me! He's going to chew me up and swallow me! I'm going to be fish bait! I'm going to be his dinner! And sure enough, the fish swam right up to him, and he was right inside the fish's mouth, past the teeth, past the tongue, down the fish's throat, and into the belly of the fish. What a great picture. There was Jonah, belly of the fish. Wow. What would you do if you were in the belly of the fish? I don't know about you, but I'd start praying. And I'm sure that's what Jonah did. And the story of Jonah was written by him. So we know that there's something that's going to happen. So here's Jonah down in the belly of this big fish. He's all alone and can't see anything because it's dark. And I would imagine that the first thing he noticed was maybe the smell. Oh, it must have smelled so bad. All those dead fish that maybe were laying in there, pieces of them. I just imagine he probably kept thinking, oh, this is awful. And then I thought about what did he hear? What kind of noises did he hear in that fish? Could he hear the stomach making gurgling noises like ours does? Could he hear maybe water sloshing around? And then what did he feel? Oh my, I'm sure he must have been standing in a puddle like you can see in this picture. And he probably could feel things, and it was like slimy. So here he was in this slimy, smelly, dark place. And I'm sure that Jonah, if he could have, or maybe he did anyway because he was standing in a puddle, I bet he fell on his knees and he started praying. And he said, oh, Lord, I am crying out to you in my distress, in my great trouble. Here I am, Lord, in the belly of this great big fish, and I don't know what to do, Lord. And how am I going to get out of here? Or will I ever get out? Is this where I'm going to die? What next, Lord? And Jonah was in the belly of this big fish for 3 days and 3 nights.
3 days later.
Now you must remember that Jonah is the one who wrote this book. And as he was a prophet, or a preacher as we say, he was the one who told this story after it all happened. So of course he knew what the ending was. And I think as he knelt there in the dark and the time went by, I wonder if he ever slept, because I'm sure he was exhausted. And then I wondered about, do you suppose his eyes got adjusted to the dark? Have you ever laid in a dark room and eventually you can see like shapes and you can see things moving around? Or I wondered if he saw the fish floating around in the stomach of that big fish. And there he was, and he was praying. And you know, as he prayed, he began to realize that he could not run away from God. There's some scripture in Psalms 139 that says that no matter where we go, no matter what we do, God sees us. He knows where we are, where we've been, where we're headed. He knows the beginning and to the end. And this is what Jonah finally figured out, that this is where God wanted him to be. In fact, in his prayer, he said, why, I could have drowned. But instead, God sent a big fish to save me. And here I am, I'm still alive. And he prayed, I'm sure, every day, even though he couldn't tell what day it was. I mean, he didn't have a calendar in there. He had no way to mark off how long he'd been in there. But he knew that he had to pray. And he had to ask God to forgive him for trying to run away, trying to escape what God wanted him to do. And that was to go to Nineveh, to tell those people that with their evil ways and their cruelness, that they needed to change and turn their lives over to God and be what he wanted them to be. And so the 3 days and the 3 nights passed. And Jonah prayed one more time. And this time, God answered his prayer. And God spoke to the fish. And he told that big fish, he said, you head over towards the land. And that's what he did. And he vomited Jonah right up out of his stomach onto the dry land. Wow. Wouldn't that have been something to see? And I'm sure Jonah looked around and he probably shook his head and maybe he pulled some of the seaweed off of his head that he had hanging there. And he said, "Whew, I'm alive. God has given me another chance." And I want you to know, boys and girls, that God is a God of second chances. He is a God of do-overs. So that when we mess up, He forgives and lets us start all over again. So we can get it right with His help, not our own. And so Jonah looked around and God spoke to him and He said, "Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh. And I want you to tell those people that they need to give up their evil ways and believe in me and live right." And so Jonah, he got up and he started walking. Now, we know that he got dropped off at the land, but he still was a long ways from Nineveh. He had quite a ways he had to walk. And as I understood, it was like 500 miles. So it was going to take him a few days to get there. And I have often wondered if while he was walking, maybe he was trying to figure out, why was God doing this? Why did God want these people to have another chance? I think Jonah had forgotten that he got a second chance too. So finally he got to Nineveh. Oh, Nineveh was a huge, big city. So large that it was said that it would take 3 days to walk across it. Well, I tried to spend some time figuring out how long that would take a person to walk, but I'm not real sure. And it says, I looked up and they said that it might have been 60 miles wide. So that is a really big city. And on the very first day that Jonah was there, he started walking through the city and he started telling everybody the message that God had for them. And he said, 40 days. You have 40 days. And if you don't repent and change and turn from your evil ways, God is going to destroy this city. He's going to wipe it out. He's going to overthrow it. Any word you want to use, God is going to get rid of them. And so as he walked through every place he went, I can just see him walking through the markets, maybe walking through, well, I guess they didn't call them suburbs back then, but he kept walking through every place where people lived. He probably walked past the stores. He looked everywhere, and everybody was getting the message. In fact, even the king of Nineveh heard the message. I don't know if you can see him in this picture, but the king is in here. And he heard about what Jonah was saying. And he got scared. He said, boy, this man must mean business. And then he said, God must mean business. 40 days. I think that was a pretty long time that he was given him. But you got to think about how long it took Jonah to walk around that city and tell everybody. And so the king, he took off his royal robe and he took off his crown and he laid them down and he put on sackcloth. Now sackcloth would be something like maybe what you would see that they put grain in. It would be a real rough cloth and it'd be uncomfortable to wear, and I'm sure it would make you itch. But he put that on, and then he sat in ashes to show God how sorry he was. And then he fasted. Now fasting means that he went without eating or drinking for days. And the reason a person would fast would be to show God how serious you are, that you really do mean business, and that you really are sorry. And so the king, he decided he would send out a decree. He would send out a message to all the people in Nineveh. And in the message it said, everyone was to fast, and everyone was to pray. Everyone was to wear sackcloth and put ashes on their head, because he knew that the more people that prayed, then God would know that more people were serious about this business. And so they all did that. And in fact, even the animals was included. They didn't let the animals eat either. And so God knew that this people really didn't want to be destroyed. That they wanted him to save them. And they believed in God. And so God decided not to destroy Nineveh. And so he said to Jonah, he said, this is what we're going to do. And so Jonah, as he walked around the city and saw the people doing these things to show that they were sorry, that they weren't eating, and that they were just praying. And he walked up the hill outside of the town, and he said, I'm going to go up there and sit down because I want to see what God is going to do. So he went up there, and as he walked up, he started praying. He said, Lord, this is what I knew you would do, because you are kind and forgiving and gracious, and you're going to not destroy these people. When I still feel, Lord, that they need to be destroyed. They are cruel, evil people. How can you possibly forgive them? Why would you do that? And he said, this is why I ran away, because I didn't want you to forgive them. Well, God asked Jonah, he said, why are you still angry at them? How can you be angry? Well, as we can all figure out, Jonah had forgotten again what God had done for him, that he gave him a second chance. But you know what? God loves us so much that he pursues us, he runs after us, he gives us chances over and over again in our lives to come to know him, because he loves us so very much. Well, Jonah went up on the hill, as you can see, and he made himself a little shelter, which doesn't look very good. There's a lot of holes in that shelter. I don't think the sun would stay off of him very well. And he sat up there, and we don't know how many days. And he kept watching and waiting and thinking that maybe God was actually going to do something, but he didn't. So during the day, later in the day, God sent a hot wind, a real hot wind. Jonah, whew, boy, he was hot, and that sun was beating down on him, and he kept saying, this is not good. And then during the night, God had a plant grow up over top of Jonah so that he could have some shade. And he spent a whole day in the shade looking out at the people. And God knew that this was going to help Jonah, maybe make him feel better. But then, during the night, there was this ugly little worm that came along, and it started eating all of the leaves that was on the vine, the branches and everything. That was one hungry little worm, and he ate it all. And pretty soon, Jonah was back to the shelter that he had made. He was no longer in the shade. And he was angry. He was angry at the worm. He was angry at the plant, the vine. And God told him, he said, why are you so angry? Do you not know that I forgave you? And there is 120,000 people in Nineveh. That's a lot of people. But you know, God loved every single one of them. And he wanted to give them another chance. And so this story is about God's love and his forgiveness and do-overs and second chances and third chances and fourth chances, because God's love is so great. He wants every one of us to come to know him and live for him. And that is the end of my story.